Hey guys, welcome back to Mysteries. In this case, Brandon Swanson, a 19-year-old, went missing when he was driving back home in Minnesota. When he went missing, he was on the phone call with his parents as he vanished.
Brandon Swanson, born January 30th, 1989, went missing. He was 19 years old and was at a Marshall, Minnesota when he drove his car into a ditch on his way home from celebrating the end of the spring semester. He graduated from Marshall High School in 2007, and he chose to study wind turbines for a year at the Minnesota West Community and Technical College campus in Canby. Classes at Minnesota West ended on the academic year on May 13, 2008, and Swanson stayed in Canby for the evening to celebrate with friends. At two different parties, he was observed to consume some alcoholic beverages, but his friends said not enough to make him seem visibly intoxicated. Swanson left Canby for the 30-mile drive home before midnight. Just before 2 a.m., he called his parents on his cell phone, telling them that he had driven his Chevrolet Lumina off the road and into a ditch from which he could not remove the car. He was not hurt and asked them to come to where he was and pick him up. Annette and Brian Swanson got in their truck and drove out to where they thought he was, keeping him on the phone despite occasional hang-ups and drops. Brandon stayed with his car and tried to signal them by flashing the lights on and off, but they saw nothing, nor did he see them do the same. Brandon finally gave up on them and told them he was leaving the car to walk towards the lights because he could see what he believed was Lind, a small town about 7 miles southwest of Marshall. He told his father to head for the parking lot of a local bar and wait for him there. Brian began driving there, talking to his son as he did. Shortly after 2:30 a.m., 47 minutes into the call, Brandon suddenly interrupted himself on the phone and said, "Oh." He was silent for the remainder of the call until his parents hung up and made multiple attempts to call him back. Brandon has not been seen or heard from since. At 6:30 a.m., his parents reported Brandon missing to Lynn police. They were told at first that it was hardly unusual for a young man that age to stay out all night after the last day of college classes. Annette Swanson specifically recalled that one of the officers said it was Brandon's right to be missing. Later that morning, the Lynn police did start a search, but found no trace of Brandon in the town or outside. They requested that the office of Lyon County Sheriff Joel Dahl assist them. To better focus the search, the sheriff's office obtained Brandon's cell phone records, which revealed that Brandon had been calling from the vicinity of Taunton along State Highway 68, the main route to Canby, northwest of Marshall. Searching in that area, deputies discovered Brandon's abandoned car in the ditch off a gravel road along the Lincoln County line, a mile north of Highway 68, bringing the office of that county sheriff, Jack Vizecki, into the investigation as well. He told the media that the Lumina had gotten hung up on the top of an incline at the edge of the road, not seriously enough to damage the car, but enough to keep the wheels from touching the ground on that side. There was nothing else found amiss with the car, and due to the grass and gravel in the area surrounding it, there were no tracks and thus no way to tell what direction Brandon might have started walking. His cell phone call had been routed through a tower at the intersection of County Routes 3 and 10 near Minneota, another town along Highway 68. By May 15th, the call had been determined to come from within 5 miles of the tower. Searches were concentrating their efforts there. Since part of the circle included Yellow Medicine County to the north, authorities from that jurisdiction also took that part. Dahl noted that from the area, a red light atop of a Taunton grain elevator could be seen. He thought it was possible that the red light Brandon had seen had led him to believe Lynn was within walking distance. Ground searches were being complemented with a flyover by an aerial team. Search dogs were also brought in from the Twin Cities. A team of bloodhounds from nearby Codington County, South Dakota, picked up a 3-mile scent trail that largely followed the field road west-northwest to an abandoned farm, then along the Yellow Medicine River to a point where it appeared to enter the stream. Brandon had mentioned passing fences and hearing water nearby, his father recalled. On the theory that Brandon might have drowned, boats from the state's Department of Natural Resources were deployed along the river and gates were installed. Deputies also walked the river's banks, and horses and all-terrain vehicles were deployed in the surrounding area. However, Dahl ruled out a more organized, extensive ground search. After the original search found no sign of Swanson, most efforts were discontinued. Sheriff Izeki continued to walk the 2 miles of the yellow medicine in that area every day for 30 days. The Swansons left their porch light on all night, every night, as a symbol of their hope that Brandon would eventually return or be found and still do. Searches resumed late that fall, after fields planted shortly after the disappearance had been harvested. Dogs on those searches continued to follow scents of human remains into an area northwest of Porter that had not been searched earlier. Efforts picked up again in spring, and the snow melted but before planting a cycle that continued through 2011. By that time, 122 square miles had been searched. In 2010, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension took over as lead on the case. It was set up by a tip line. By 2015, 90 leads had been reported that way. By that point, when official searches resumed, the area of interest had moved towards Mud Creek, a tributary of the Yellow Medicine north and northwest of Porter. Annette Swanson does not think he drowned there. After following the scent to the water, the dog continued up across the other side and along that riverbank to another gravel road where it continued towards the Yellow Medicine County line and ended. There really is nothing to indicate that he's in the river, she told CNN. Brian Swanson also recalls that any alcohol his son had consumed earlier in the evening, notwithstanding, he did not seem disoriented or confused during their phone conversations. If Brandon is still alive, there are possibilities, although they appear remote. He could have intentionally disappeared, but his parents do not believe he would have done that. Visecki said he could not rule out foul play, even though there was no evidence of it. Someone could have been in the shadows and they got him that way, he speculated. After the searches, Annette Swanson was still struck by the initial response of the Lynn police that her son had a right to be missing when she told them how old he was. I'm his mother and I knew something was horribly wrong, she recalled later. She and Brian began lobbying for changes in state law that would require an investigation into the case of a missing adult to begin as soon as it is reported, much as was already required in cases of possibly abducted children. Annette met with Marty Seifert, minority leader of the State House of Representatives at the time, whose district included Marshall, in a local restaurant. The two talked about the problems she experienced with police when she reported her son missing. She knew it wouldn't help in her son's case, but that it could help others in the future, Seifert recalled in 2015. Seifert introduced a bill called Brandon's Law that would make the required change by amending the law governing the state's existing missing child program to change the word child to person. He recalled considerable resistance at first from the state's law enforcement community as it was developed in committee. Part of it had to do with privacy, especially regarding cell phones, he told the Marshall Independent. Technology was emerging then, so there was discussions about privacy and when they can ping you and when they can't. Dennis Frederickson introduced a companion bill in the state Senate. After it passed both houses in May 2009, Governor Tim Pawlenty signed it into law, and the Swansons and their daughter, Jameen, in attendance at the ceremony. The effect of the change also required that police, in addition to determining in their preliminary investigation that the reported person is indeed missing, determine whether the person is potentially in dangerous circumstances. They must also notify other nearby law enforcement agencies promptly. Brandon's Law also clarifies that the agency taking the report is the lead agency investigating the case. The absence of the distinction had created some problems in later phases of the initial service when 3 different counties were involved. Police were no longer allowed to refuse a report based on an initial belief that no criminal activity was involved, the brevity of the interval since the person was last seen, the possibility that the person may have intentionally disappeared, or the lack of relationship between the missing person and the reporter. Following the governor's signature, the law took effect at the beginning of July 2009. 4 other states have passed similar laws. Seifert left the legislature in 2010, but he still has the pen Pawlenty used to sign that bill into law. I consider it one of the most important bills I authored in my 14 years. It will save lives.
What do you guys think happened to Brandon? Do you think fair play should be looked at more? Let us know what you think in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time on Mysteries.